In today's video, we're going to be talking about compression testers. We're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into understanding how they work and how they fail, and whether you can trust them to tell you whether your engine is good. I was doing a little compression test on a new project that I have yet to finish a video on, and I was getting a reading that was lower than I wanted, and I started to suspect that maybe my compression gauge wasn't good. But although it's brand new, or at least it's less than a year old. But I started thinking about, well, I think I'm gonna try to test it. I've got a compressor. It's got gauges on it, and so maybe I can go ahead and test it. And to do that, I kind of drew back on all the different compression testers I've had throughout the years, and some that I've picked up at garage sales, or just parts of them. And so I thought, well, I'll look through that and see if I can come up with a plan for for testing my compression tester. And as we go, I'll talk about the parts of the compression tester and kind of where they might fail. All right, here we have a who's who of compression gauges. This is the newest one I've got. It's one that I bought with a kit for motorcycles, and it comes with all the adapters and the hose and everything else. This is one I bought just because it was an old snap-on. I figured, well, it's probably well made, and it seems like a sturdy little piece. But it just has that hose at the bottom that can move a little bit, and then if you tighten that down, it seals that up. And then this is the one that I actually was using for many years, and I mean, it's obviously had a lot of chemical spills on it, and different things have happened to it. And it had at one time quit working, and I replaced a valve that's right in here that releases the pressure, and then was able to fix it. I just put a different Schrader valve in there. So I guess that leads us into talking about the parts of the gauges. Essentially it's a small vessel, just like a tube, that you put air into. The air goes into the tube, and it has to be held in there, so it has to have a one-way valve in there somewhere that keeps the air from coming back out. So in this case, let's see if it would be right there. That's a Schrader valve, and so that holds the pressure in it, just like it's a little tube or whatever. And then there's a valve on the side, and this can be kind of different depending on the model. So some of these have little push buttons. Actually, that's a push button as well. But when you do that, you allow the air to leak out of the chamber, and that allows you, when you disconnect it, for it not to pop in your face or make a lot of noise. They all have very similar parts. This one, I'd have to take it apart to see where the Schrader valve is. Well, my guess is it's in there, and I bet it's one of the most common ways that it fails. And then this one, which is just a exact same thing as the other two. I would imagine at some point that you might get a leak inside the actual gauge itself, in which case either probably wouldn't read, or it would you'd hear it leaking from the head. But anyway, I'm going to figure out how to test these. Here's my plan. I've got a piece of hose here, and what I think I'm going to do is, when I looked through that kit over there, I had some small, a really small fitting that I think I can get into one end of that. And then I've got this for my compressor that I think if I slid that hose up here and put a clamp on it, that I could then meter the air out of this and have it register inside of the chamber and seal it, and I would see what the peak is and compare it to what my compressor says that it should be. And then that would be the best way. And even if a gauge is off by 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever, as long as you know that, I think that's good. And then you just need the gauge to be consistent from cylinder to cylinder if you're doing a multi-cylinder engine. In this case, I'm doing just a small single cylinder engine, and it's a two-stroke actually, and I'm not even sure I was able to spin it that fast when I was pulling it over. I mean, it was hard to pull, so I'm not sure how the speed of pulling the throttle or pulling the engine over impacts the pressures. It might be an interesting study with some kind of variable drive or a drill that you can with multiple speeds that you could check the compression at each one, but maybe that's a video somebody else can make. All right, let's keep going. All right, I got it rigged up. As you can see, I've got a hose going from that nozzle to a compression tester. And then behind it, I've got the compressor that shows the tank pressure, which in this case, it looks like it's about 125 pounds maybe. And then it's limited down to, oh, this says I've got 110, 115 pounds of pressure in there. So we'll see if that's accurate or not. Let's do a quick test on this. So what I expect to happen is I expect air to go in there and get trapped in there and at the highest reading that is in the hose, I guess. All right, so my pressure here is right at just about 100. It looks like it could be 100 if you look up or down. So 100 psi. So I'm actually off by a little bit, and my pressure did drop in here, and I'm not sure, or actually not there. Here now it's down to about 105. I think what's happening there might be because this might be leaking a little bit and pressuring this up over time. So it was just sitting here not being used, and I think it increased the pressure in there. And then when I drew it down, that's really the true pressure in the line. So that would mean there's probably a defect in this thing that goes, between the pressure regulator for the outlet pressure. But either way, we've got 100 psi. So we have a good functioning compression tester. Let me zoom this out a little bit. Okay. Next up is the snap-on. Let's see. It looks like we're still holding somewhere in the 105 psi range. Let's see what this does. That's not good. And take two. This thing clearly doesn't want to get tested. It keeps popping off. Let's try one more time. It looks like it's getting up to 100 pounds, which means the gauge is reading right, but I hear leaking. Hold on. Okay, so this gauge is leaking from the release here. And so I would need to probably take that apart and see if there's something in there I can replace, maybe an O-ring or something like that. But it looks like it's a good gauge. It just needs that changed out. And well, thanks for joining me on that little adventure. I guess what I learned from this was that my compression tester is accurate-ish, and that my compression on what I'm working on is actually 70 psi. One mitigating factor there is that I live at 7,250 feet, and whether you know it or not, or I don't know if you know this, but there's a correction factor for altitude that your compression will be lower when you take a tested altitude. And so the factor for around here, it means that 70 psi is 80% of what my actual reading would be at sea level, or 81%, somewhere in there. So between that and spinning the engine a little faster to get a little bit more compression, I think this is a running engine, or it will run, and I'll continue to work on it with that assumption. But compression gauges are important. That they work well, and we talked a little bit about how some of the ways they might fail are, and so you can kind of always, if you have doubts about yours, you can check it this way. That's all I've got for this video. I appreciate you joining, and it's just a little short, quick stuff. I've got other stuff I'm working on and trying to get some videos made so I can get more content out on some of the other vehicles that I have. Thank you.